Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us. Today we're going to talk about what it was like moving from a big city to Bull City, also known as Durham. Before we get started, we're going to go over a few introductions, but I do want to encourage you all to submit questions if you do have them. We're going to go through those at the end. But first, we're going to talk about some of the frequently asked questions that we get for candidates who are looking to move to Durham from a bigger city. So I'll go ahead and start. My name is Amanda. Before Fuqua, I lived in Chicago for 9 years and grew up outside of Chicago, so I'm definitely a Midwestern girl and a big city girl, but I love Durham, and I'm excited to be able to share with you what my experience has been like.
Hi, good morning. I'm Ashley Warren, a second year also. Originally from Ohio, but I spent 10 years in DC and Philadelphia, and I spent the last 4 years in New York City. So like Amanda, also a city girl at heart, but really love being in Durham.
Morning, I'm Will Harris. I'm originally from Newport News, Virginia. Before school, I was in Atlanta, Georgia, and I've really enjoyed my time in Durham, and I'm excited to talk about it this morning.
Morning, guys. My name is Tarun. I'm originally from the Washington, D.C. area, though I also spent some time in New York City. Similar to all of these guys, I'm just really excited to be in Durham and have really had a great experience down here.
Awesome. So as I mentioned, make sure you submit questions if you do have them. We'll be able to answer those at the end. But first, let's kick it off and just talk about what the transition to Durham was like for you guys. Moving from a big city, did you have a month or so before coming here? What did that look like?
I can take the first one, sure. So really easy coming from Atlanta, actually. I grabbed a U-Haul, thankfully had the help of my parents. Didn't have much furniture coming to Durham, and was really thankful that the incoming students, along with the existing students, there was a nice Google Doc of people largely giving things away. Got a free couch, got a free bed, all very clean, which I thought was a good testament to Fuqua students. So really easy for me, just a drive, but I'm sure some of the other folks, it was a flight and maybe a little bit more challenging.
Yeah, so actually for me, I actually had a very similar experience coming from DC. Just kind of packed a bunch of my essentials into a car. Actually, I was able to fit. I'm a pretty minimalist, when it comes to moving in. And similar to Will, really took advantage of the second years or the soon to be graduating Fuqua students who posted a variety of different sort of furniture sets to kind of get us started in our apartments. I think one of the really nice things is a lot of the residencies at Fuqua are very centralized to a few different apartment buildings, and so it's a pretty easy transition in terms of getting that furniture and kind of getting yourself set up in a lot of these apartments.
Yeah, and then in addition to after moving, I moved had about a month before classes actually started to spend time in Durham. And Durham in the summer the weather is warm. It's very, very warm. But to me, it was fabulous because a lot of the buildings have pools and people are having a lot of cookouts. So it was a great time to come early and really enjoy the weather and enjoy being outside. Lots of trails to hike on. I'm sure we'll talk more about other activities that you can do, but it was really nice and relaxing to come and have that month before classes started to start to get to know people and enjoy the Durham community.
Yeah, echo all of that. Thank you guys for sharing. So what made you choose Fuqua? The hot question that I think everyone wants to know the answer to.
I can lead again.
Yeah.
So there were a lot of both personal and professional reasons for me, I'd say. First off, personally, I guess kind of in keeping with the reason that we're here, I was in a big city already, again, Atlanta, Georgia, and figured I'd be going to a big city after school and kind of wanted that 2-year pause, a 2-year reprieve, and a kind of easier, slower paced town where I knew school would have its own challenges, but it was nice to know that outside of school it was a really nice pace and a really nice style of living. So that was a big thing for me personally. Professionally, I was confident that I was going to have every opportunity professionally that I was interested in. I came to school interested in consulting and knew that all the companies that I was interested in talking to were going to be here coming, doing office hours, et cetera, coffee chats, and have been thrilled with how easy all that was, even in a small town like Durham.
Yeah, and just to kind of build on that, my undergrad experience was in a sort of similar suburban setting, and I really found that as a really important kind of enriching community building experience in terms of really feeling like everything in terms of my school life was contained in this one kind of campus, and I could kind of access all the resources I needed, and everyone was really kind of invested in being in that one community. And that's really what I found consistent at Fuqua. I think comparing to some of the other schools that I was looking at, I really appreciated sort of the opportunity to be in a very self-contained environment where no one was kind of leaving on the weekends to go other places, and everyone was sort of invested in making the most of their 2 years here, and really engaging with the community around them, and that was really important to me.
What brought you to Fuqua?
Me?
Amanda?
It was the school that was the most out of my comfort zone. So undergrad, I went to school in Chicago. My family is nearby. And I felt like with getting my MBA, I wanted to really push myself and do something that was different for me. And I felt like when I visited Fuqua, the community that was visible was something that I was looking for, because I feel like academics, very important, getting a good job, very important, but one thing that you can't put a price on is the people and being able to build your network, and that was super important to me with this experience. And I felt like of the schools I looked at, Fuqua offered that in a very genuine way that I could see and was visible, and that to me was the final decision factor for me personally. So yeah, what about you?
So I think one thing that I was really excited about was having met, I actually came to visit Fuqua back in like 2015. It was a while ago. And I met alumni while I was here, and I've kept in touch with them all the way through actually transitioning to Fuqua. They've helped me like understand my career trajectory, have put me in touch with their network. So I think that the community feel that we have is really strong, even with alumni. So you recognize that it doesn't just last for the 2 years, but it extends beyond. So that really resonates with me.
That's fair. I feel like the alumni here are amazing, and that was like a big part of my experience too, and like how accessible they are and just present and willing to help. And I think that just is something that like is instilled at Fuqua with like the ability to have such close-knit relationships with people here. So that was something that I was like, I can't put a price on that. Like that to me is like a big distinguishing factor in terms of an MBA. So yeah, and I guess like transition question a little bit, but what's your favorite part about Durham now that you've moved here and going to Fuqua second year, so you got a little bit more time?
Yeah, so I can start off. I think Durham really has sort of the big city amenities in sort of a small town setting, I think is like the best way to describe it. It has pretty much everything you want in terms of a thriving food scene, like lots of really trendy restaurants and little like pop-up experiences, really cool breweries, and really awesome places that, I think us as classmates spend a lot of time on the weekends, kind of just hanging out at. And it's got amazing sort of outdoor opportunities, great hiking. Anytime my fiance is down here visiting, we're kind of out on the trails around campus. The Duke Forest is right off campus, and it's a pretty extensive, amount of sort of outdoor activities. So I think it really kind of offers everything that you'd be looking for in a big city in terms of the social environments and places to go out, and cool places to eat at, with kind of also a lot of really cool opportunities to kind of get outside campus and be outdoors.
Yeah, I totally agree with all that. The only thing I'd add is I went to a small undergrad school, or a small town undergrad school, and enjoyed that. And so I liked that piece of Duke, but also external to Duke, the ability to go downtown into downtown Durham, where there's kind of its own community separate from the school, that it's nice to, spend a lot of time at Fuqua, but also when you are like spending a lot of time there, like looking for an opportunity to experience something else, you can just go right next door to downtown Durham, and it's a whole different culture, a whole new subset of people. So have really enjoyed that. A lot of awesome golf around here as well. That's something that I've really appreciated. I think 3 of the top 50 public courses, like amongst universities, are in town. So I'm actually playing today.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Yeah. So a lot of good golf in the area for those that care about that.
I got to be honest, I love the airport here.
I was going to say, yeah.
So like Chicago, you have like O'Hare, you have Midway. Like I can go from like laying on my couch through security, like at my gate in like 37 minutes.
Yeah.
It's amazing. Yeah. Like, and it's international. So like, I don't know. One thing that I'm just like, I cannot get enough of is the RDU airport.
Yeah.
Me personally, absolutely. I don't know.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I also think sports have been really fun here too. Yeah. You've got Duke and UNC basketball. You also have the Durham Bulls, the baseball team. So it's really fun I feel like you can get a wide range of experiences coming from New York City. I'm somebody who like also from time to time enjoys like just going to like a hotel bar and having a cocktail, or something that feels kind of upscale to some degree. You can get that here. We have like 21C Hotel, which is a really nice place to just kind of get away, like what was saying, like downtown Durham. So it's kind of nice that you can get like a wide range of experiences while you're here.
Yeah. Just a quick reminder, if you guys have questions, feel free to submit. I see some coming in, so we'll definitely get to those at the end. But I did want to ask you guys, like, what do you enjoy doing in Durham for fun, other than maybe sports and travel?
Has anyone been axe throwing yet?
No.
Yes, I have.
You
Yeah,
have?
urban axes. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm going soon, but I haven't gone yet. Can you tell us about axe throwing?
Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit bizarre that this is becoming a trend sort of nationwide.
Yeah.
It seems like a somewhat dangerous. You think going in that it's going to be a bit of a dangerous activity, but it's actually like a very kind of controlled environment. They even have sort of like most of these places have bars next to it, so you can kind of socialize and hang out. But it's a really fun experience. It's really I've been honing my sort of target practice through those activities. But yeah, there's a lot of those kind of cool, interesting little activities that you can do downtown. Whether it's axe throwing, whether it's really awesome sort of festivals that downtown Durham puts on a regular basis. Awesome concert venues. I'm a big music lover myself, and a priority of mine in looking at business schools, quite frankly, was checking out kind of the music scene in the local areas. And I think one of the really cool things about Durham is they have a lot of smaller venues that get, again, sort of playing on this idea of kind of big city amenities. They get pretty big acts. And so you get to see them in a lot more intimate settings. And that's been really exciting to see as well.
Yeah, I know. I think that I don't have a great deal to add. I think you hit it on the head that it's a lot of the amenities that you're looking for in a big city coming with the smaller city convenience of all that. Another thing that we didn't mention that I want to make sure for like those interested in theater and big shows, like the Performing Arts Center draws some really big acts. Like Hamilton was here last year. I know that was a very hot ticket. And so just, again, playing to Tarun's theme of having a lot of flexibility to both like go do things like hiking or trail running, but also getting like a cool cocktail at Alley 26. Like you kind of get the best of both worlds. And I think that's kind of the main purpose of our panel is to try to convey that to y'all that are interested in coming here.
Yeah, one thing that I think would be remiss to mention, though, is like what Big Duke offers or like broader Duke. So, for example, like they have an arts annex where you can go and like literally any medium you want to use for art, like paint, oil, pastel, clay, like that's available to you. And then even like we have incredible speakers that come through here. So like I went and saw Sue Bird a couple weeks ago speak at the bigger university, and it's just like you don't necessarily get that where it's like so accessible and intimate and just like getting to hear and see these things that like you would expect in a big city, but having the closeness to it is something that's really rare and unique, and I appreciate it a ton.
And real quick to add, Amanda, there is, outside of like things like that with Bigger Duke, there are formal connections between Fuqua and Bigger Duke. Like there's I don't know if y'all are involved in a Fuqua to Duke program where you're partnered with an undergrad student who's interested in business, and it's a nice like connection. You're helping them with resumes, cover letters. A lot of them are very smart. It's tempting to like have them review our resumes and cover letters, but that's another cool thing that I've enjoyed getting involved in, and it kind of plays to the whole like friendship between Fuqua and the Bigger Duke community and how it's all connected and how it's all kind of builds on itself to make it a good environment.
Yeah, and one thing I'd also just kind of building on a lot of this is kind of thinking about sort of your business opportunities here. I had the opportunity to take advantage of a mentored study last spring here at Fuqua, which is basically kind of an experiential learning opportunity that the school offers where you can basically shape your own sort of experience working with a company in the area and kind of crafting a project with that company that sort of helps you to expand your business skills. I think one of the great things about Durham is it's a really thriving community when it comes to small, medium-sized businesses like high-growth startups. A lot of these, it's a big hub. I think the kind of Raleigh-Durham triangle is a big hub for a lot of these really exciting technology companies and things like that. And again, you know, given kind of it's in a bit of a smaller setting, there's not as much sort of jockeying and competition to kind of get your foot in the door at a lot of these companies. So, for example, the company that I had the opportunity to work at, which was a dream kind of music technology company for me, I was able to kind of approach Fuqua and the experiential learning office and kind of let them know about my interest in this company. And within a day, they'd set me up with meetings with the COO and CEO of this company. Awesome. And the brand of Fuqua goes so far that it was really kind of a natural sort of development in sort of building this project that I ultimately did with this company. So tons of really cool opportunities to engage with really exciting companies in the area. And you really kind of have your pick of what you kind of want to do.
Yeah, no, that's also actually one of the questions that we had was what was the impact of kind of being in the Research Triangle area, and I think that's a great way to summarize it. Does anybody else have, I guess, any insight or thoughts on that?
Yeah, I can add. Fuqua is also the hub of social impact in a lot of business schools. So we have the Center for the Advancement of Social Entrepreneurship. And so if you're interested in the nonprofit space or mission-driven for-profits, there's a lot of companies here that are doing that work, and the connections that we have between Big Duke and Fuqua, the K Center, and also the community is just really, it's a really great place to be involved in that kind of work as well.
Yeah, do you mind actually going a little deeper on that? Because we did have some questions about nonprofit work and this area.
So Robin Furman in Case, I believe she's the executive director of programs. Her husband has a nonprofit here that works on the issues of homelessness. And so she plans, we have Fuqua on board, and we also have some projects within FCCP, the Fuqua Client Consulting Practicum. And so FCCP is a class, Fuqua on Board is a volunteer opportunity for students to be able to sit on a board of a local nonprofit. And so between these two opportunities, you have a ton of resources between CASE and these two opportunities to kind of explore those particular roles within local nonprofits.
Awesome. So we're gonna switch gears a little bit here and talk about recruiting. So I want to maybe spend a little bit of time talking about what on-campus recruiting looks like and maybe a little bit of custom search. If anybody has some anecdotes they'd like to share on that, that'd be awesome.
Sure. You start with custom.
Yeah, happy to start with custom. So, the custom recruiting search is very much kind of what you make of it. I think coming to Fuqua, there's a variety of companies that are obviously actively recruiting on campus, and I think the rest of you guys can probably speak to that a little bit more. But my experience was, the Fuqua brand goes really, really far, even sort of virtually. So, when you're going through the customer's recruiting process, a lot of what your experience is kind of reaching out to folks via email, getting them on phone calls and things like that. And I think just being able to sort of even have the sort of signature line that says, MBA candidate from Fuqua, opened just so many doors. And I think that obviously the alumni base from Fuqua and more broadly Duke is obviously incredibly engaged and excited to kind of help out students that are looking to work in companies that don't necessarily actively recruit on campus. One thing I will say is, even if you're going through the customer's recruiting process, a lot of the companies that you would kind of consider off-campus opportunities do have some touch points that come to campus, right? It might not be to the extent that some of the more traditional on-campus recruiters come, but they might at least come for an employer presentation, setting up sort of individual coffee chats with students. So even when you are going through more of an off-campus experience, there's a ton of on-campus presence with a lot of these recruiters, and kind of continuing those conversations, over the phone, over email, and then ultimately sort of meeting them at their place of business, whatever cities they might be in. Just the Fuqua brand goes tremendously far and really opens a lot of doors.
And also a testament to the Fuqua brand is one thing that I think we've seen over the last, even just since we've been here, is off-campus recruiters becoming on-campus recruiters based on Fuqua intern success there. So, I can think of 2 or 3 companies that have done that, given that, someone like Tarun reaches out, does a great job at his internship, and suddenly they're like, wow, we really want to make a more formal process for Fuqua recruiting. But transitioning to the kind of more formal on-campus side, thinking about things like consulting, banking, big tech recruiting, I was shocked at how, easy is not the right word for it, but how accessible the recruiters were. Some of these companies truly have full-time representatives sitting down in the Fox Center, like our cafeteria, looking to have coffee chats, just looking to learn about your interests, learn about your background, and get you connected to certain offices that you might be interested in. So I found that to be a really incredible resource. That was something that I'd been told a little bit about just based on friends that have come to or had gone to Fuqua before I was here, but was still kind of shocked at how much companies pour into appealing to Fuqua and how important that connection is between some of these really big companies in Fuqua.
Yeah, and I think it's a little bit difficult at times because there are so many big names that come to pick where you want to go when, because there are so many different options, and it's very difficult to stay focused sometimes when you have these employers coming here and you're like, oh, I want to work at Google or Apple, or maybe somewhere like in the Research Triangle area that's more specific to like a niche. So yeah, it's a great experience. I love it.
If there's one thing I'd like to add to that too.
Please.
So I kind of explored both the traditional on-campus recruiting and custom searching as well. And I think that it's really great that our Career Management Center has like a formal class to help you kind of build a list of companies that you're going to, so you're not left on your own to like try to totally figure out how to, build a custom list. And so it's been really great to understand how to, really utilize LinkedIn, Indeed, these things in a different kind of way than I had used them before, because someone was instructing me on like, this is how you're reaching out to alumni. And again, our alumni network was incredibly responsive in my custom search as well. So just wanted to throw that in.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. And actually that spurred a thought. So even our peers and classmates, like you have no idea like how involved you will be with the first years, the second years. There are a ton of impressive people here who have done recruiting or are very good at certain things or industries. And so you get a lot of resources just within your class that you don't even really realize are there until you're going through the recruiting process, which is incredible too. So I cannot even fail to mention that because I feel like that was a bigger part of my recruiting experience was just like my classmates and the support that they gave me. So
for sure. And to your point on like training us up on how to use LinkedIn and Indeed and all that, I think the Career Management Center is really intentional about, sure, even if you're doing on-campus recruiting now, every job after you graduate is going to turn into an off-campus recruiting scenario. And so having those skills, even though I went through a fairly formal process where I just followed what the consulting club told me to do, when I graduate, down the line, if I'm ever looking for a job in the future, Duke does a good job of giving us and kind of arming us with those skills to, things as simple as what should your outreach email look like, and then how often should you follow up, and almost more information than you could ever possibly want. But it makes you feel super prepared and not nervous about like the vast ocean of life after business school.
Yeah, I agree fully. So now that we've talked about recruiting, we're happy to talk more about that. If you guys are interested, feel free to submit questions. Let's talk a little bit about some of the highlights that you've had here at Fuqua. What are your top experiences that you can name?
There's a lot.
Yeah.
I think one that immediately comes to mind is the travel opportunities that we're able to have. Being in granted a very privileged position of business school, of having this opportunity to take 2 years off and kind of explore the world, as much as we're also kind of getting this sort of chance to make a pivot in our career and build out our business skills. And so over my spring break last year, a group of 40 of us went to Japan and South Korea, and it was really an amazing experience. It was led by a couple of Japanese students in our class, and it was just an incredibly like having the opportunity to explore these countries with people who actually had sort of local knowledge was really an amazing experience. And it's again something very unique to business school when you have the opportunity to interface with so many different students from so many different backgrounds and cultures and countries, and being able to kind of bring that all together in that kind of a trip was really an enriching experience. So that's something that just kind of popped into my head as one of my favorite experiences.
Yeah. Not to overdo it on the sports thing, I was lucky and got season tickets for basketball last year. So having season tickets during the Zion RJ season was pretty cool. So that was a big one. I think my answer is going to change after spring one. I'm actually studying on exchange in New Zealand. So there are, for those interested in exchange, every term, you can either do a full term, a full semester, or a lot of people do over winter break to not miss out on opportunity to take electives while at school. But I'm taking spring one for 8 weeks and going to New Zealand, and there are probably 50 to 60 different options for people to do. And it's really cool partnerships that Fuqua has with other kind of top international business schools. So I'm really excited about that, and was amazed at how many options there were all through Europe, Asia, all over the world. Really cool.
Yeah, very similar to the travel experiences. I'll be doing a winter exchange in Grenoble, France, for Innovation Business Week. And so it's one of the shorter exchange programs. So I think that that's nice to have that flexibility. So I'm really looking forward to that being a highlight of my experience. But also the travel experiences that you have when you get to go with your classmates to somewhere that they're from. So someone on my first year team took 65 people from our section to India. And so we visited 3 different cities there. there, and it was just a fabulous experience. And there was also a direct flight to Dubai from the airport. So we spent some time in Dubai first before we went to India. But it was just those kind of experiences, being able to travel and experience it with fabulous people has been a real highlight.
Yeah, travel's awesome. I would say that, like, me personally, it's just like such quality time with like incredible people. I can't put a price on that. I would say one of my peak days, this sounds silly, don't judge me, but like I was playing Mario Tennis with like a couple friends the other day on N64, and it was like the best day of my life, like a couple days ago, where it's just like you get to like basically have time for yourself to like to take care of yourself and like get to know people intimately that you never would know in any other setting. And that to me is like what I'm going to miss the most after leaving Fuqua.
100%. I think that, even though 2 years goes really quickly in business school, how quickly this place is like felt like home. And like how quickly you sort of started to get those feelings coming to Fuqua, I think is by far the most sort of impactful experience here. Yeah, whether it's, just feeling like I can walk to, the local bar, near kind of where a lot of our apartment buildings are, and just like without even kind of have made a plan and just walk in and know people and be able to just like hang out and start conversations. And, the different, just like on the weekends, different apartment parties that are going on, and just people hosting different sort of things. It really just makes it feel like much more of a home environment. And that's just been incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. Cool. So I think we talked a little bit about travel, but I want to maybe spend a little bit of time talking about kind of like quick weekend trips that you guys have done. So I know like as a class, like we usually go to Myrtle Beach over like, what is it, Labor Day weekend? Is that what it is? Yeah, Labor Day weekend. So there's usually like a class-wide trip, but then there's also smaller trips in the area. So what's the trip that you've taken most recently on the weekend?
Yeah, my husband and I actually rented a car and drove to Boone, North Carolina, and spent some time in the mountains. So we rented a cabin. It was very affordable. I was excited about that. We did some hiking and just spent some time away, and it was just absolutely beautiful. Loved it.
That's awesome. Yeah. A few weeks ago, me and some classmates rented a car as well, and went out into the Smoky Mountains. So, just a little bit west, North Carolina, kind of Tennessee border. Stopped in Asheville, which is an amazing city. Like, definitely recommend if you end up at Fuqua, making some visits to Asheville. It's an awesome little town that's kind of growing with tons of, again, really cool breweries and all sorts of awesome restaurants and things like that. But yeah, made the trip out to the Smoky Mountains. We got a cabin for a few days and just were in the mountains, just hiking around. And it was an awesome experience. And it was so cool that we could just do that on kind of a whim. It didn't take much planning. Really, all we had to do was just get a rental car and kind of get out there.
Yeah. Now, I've gone east more than I've gone west. I've gone to the beach a bunch of times, like Wrightsville Beach, probably 2.5, 3 hours to get over there. So really nice to have that where you can go one weekend to the mountains and then the next weekend to the beach. And there aren't a ton of places that afford that opportunity, I think. Yeah,
and also, like me, I go to Atlanta a lot too. So like you get, like I love where Durham is positioned because you can get the beach and get the mountains, but you can get like a ton of major big cities, like if you want to. And I mean, Durham itself has like a ton to offer, but I feel like where it's located and the airport.
I feel like people spend a lot of weekends like going to Raleigh and you can do lots of shopping there too, or trips to DC are also very easy. And one thing I want to point out too, you've heard us like mention renting cars. So in New York City, I didn't have a car and I came to Durham without a car and have been totally fine. So it's one of those places where like you could have a car and it's very comfortable, but it's also just totally fine to not have a car because of the resources that Big Duke has in terms of transportation. So it's very easy to get around if you don't want to have a car while you're in school.
Yeah, it's actually a great segue because one of our questions was how many students have a car. I personally have a car, but like you don't really need it. Like as Ashley mentioned, there are formal transportation systems. But then we got the scooters here now, and it's like a 20-minute walk from where most people live, and you could live even closer than that. So like you really don't need it. I think there have only been like a few times where I'm like, oh yeah, like glad I have my car. If that makes sense. So
yeah.
And again, I think with so many of the students kind of living in pretty close quarters and in just a few apartment buildings that are in close proximity, I've never had a problem. I don't have a car myself, and never had a problem just hitting up someone and being like, hey, are you headed to Fuqua? And carpooling is very much a thing here, and it's very easy to kind of find rides anytime you really need.
Yeah. People are coming going all the time.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if we're talking percentages, maybe like half. I don't know.
Yeah.
60%.
Maybe.
Yeah, I'd say at
Yeah.
least half. And all apartment complexes have like parking decks, and so there's no issues
Yeah.
with finding places for your car. I have a car and just park it at my apartment complex.
It's so nice. Yeah.
Downtown parking is a little bit tougher, I'd say, but especially now with scooters, and downtown's walkable from
Yeah.
9th Street if it's
Yeah.
nice outside. So I'm glad I have a car, but to these people's points, like you can easily thrive without having a car in Durham.
Okay, awesome. So let's switch gears and start going to the questions that we have here. So you guys, if you have questions, feel free to send them in. So one question is, as an MBA student, can we become a player in a varsity team? I don't know if that you can, but I think you can be involved in some ways with sports.
This isn't like an NCAA sponsored answer. I think you can,
I think
though.
you can.
I just
Like
don't know what the rules
if
are.
you have remaining eligibility. So like Russell Wilson, he wasn't an MBA student, but he was at NC State and then had a year of eligibility and did a grad program at Wisconsin. So I do think you can run it by the NCAA first, but I think so.
I think
I do know that we have a Duke basketball player that's in the MMS program, so
Yes.
not necessarily the MBA program, but he's in a grad program at Fuqua. So I certainly think that that's an opportunity. I'm not as familiar with the NCAA eligibility rules.
Right.
Yeah, you definitely can. I just don't know what it is. So you'd have to look into it. I'm not sure like what that is, but like even if you wanted to do other sports, like in the spring we do Blue Cup, which is Duke's MBA program plays UNC's MBA program in several different sports and competitions. And so last year, for example, I was playing flag football and basketball. And then there are intramural leagues that I was part of flag football for intramural. So like there are tons of things and ways you can get involved.
Totally.
Like within Fuqua and like the MBA programs, but I think you can. I just don't know what like tactically how to do it.
Right.
Cool. And then is anybody a dual degree program? So we can maybe talk about it a little bit. Like some of our classmates are dual degrees, so like membas. But at least my understanding, at least with membas, would be like they have a year.
And MEMBA is Masters in Environmental.
Environmental. I guess the terms that everyone is not totally familiar with. So basically you do like a year prior to Fuqua, or it could be after, I believe. But basically where it's going to be just like focused on like environmental and energy related topics, and then they'll just join the daytime MBA program and just do their MBA. So they have a little bit of extra schooling, but then the MBA program I think is the same structure. They might have a little bit of separate classes that they take, but I think that's extensive, like what I know.
We have lots of dual students for the Masters of Public Policy program and the MBA combined at Sanford. So we have lots of students who are doing that work as well.
Yeah, as well as the law school and the medical school. And honestly, those students actually provide some awesome resources in terms of kind of getting us exposure to some of those other grad programs and kind of offering opportunities for us to mix with those students. I know in my section, we have a couple of MD MBAs and they've hosted mixers with the medical school. And that's just been a really cool opportunity to kind of get outside Fuqua and meet students that are in some of these other like amazing grad programs, like really, really brilliant, accomplished people. And you never know what sort of kind of like connections you're going to build through those opportunities, right? There's a lot of really awesome resources and people around this campus. So.
We also have one of our classmates actually he started the MPP program after he came here for the MBA, so had a really great experience getting to know people who are in that program. And so he decided to apply. And then, so now he'll be going for an additional year at the Sanford Public Policy School. So.
Cool.
Yeah.
So the next question that we have is, do spouses and significant others generally also move to Durham? So you guys want to
start first?
Is your significant other here on campus?
He came temporarily.
Okay.
So my husband moved with me from New York City. He stayed here for about 6 months or so, and then moved to the DC area because that's where we intend to live after school. So he came and enjoyed Durham with me for a few months while taking a break from work.
Yeah, so my significant other is also in DC, and so we kind of do the long distance thing right now, which has actually been very manageable, I think, given that distance. But I will say that the partners that are here, and I think that I would say, I don't know the statistics, but I would say the majority probably are here. they have an amazing community here at Fuqua. We call it Section 7, which is basically sort of, we have 6 official daytime MBA sections, and then Section 7 is the partners. And they truly are their own section in terms of the community that they've built. The different social events that they put on, sort of just how, and I would say Fuqua does a really, really incredible job, I think, from the time that you're, even during the application process, but from the time that you're admitted and kind of figuring out what school you want to go to, with engaging your partners, with a lot of different programming. So, if you come to an admitted students weekend, they have an entirely separate, programming for significant others the entire weekend. And it really helps them to kind of build those connections early on and start to make those relationships. And you see it kind of, when we were in orientation, quite frankly, I felt like a lot of the partners were already closer with each other than we were. And, I think that's continued on into our second year. It's a really amazing community, whether it's everything from, social events to even helping people, when they were moving down to Durham from wherever they were coming from, finding jobs in the area and just sharing those resources, sharing, dog sitters and different services like that. It's been really amazing to see. And so, while my significant other isn't here, she is very much welcomed in as if she were when she does come to visit. And I would say that community is without question, one of the best, in the country.
Yeah. There are a lot of resources that partners can take advantage of while they're here too. So as a partner, you can get a Duke ID and then you can use the gyms. There's all of the transportation services, all of the libraries, accesses to databases. So when my husband was here, he was actually studying because he wanted to change careers as well. He also has an MBA, but was taking a little bit of time off. And so he used that time to kind of study and regroup. And you can also sometimes request to sit in classes. So those things partners are really a major part of our community and can find themselves very comfortable being able to access resources and then spend time with us. So partners can also serve on, I think, in leadership positions in a lot of clubs as well. Then there's also the Intramural Sports that a lot of our partners participate in. So I think there were times when I wasn't sure if someone was my classmate or a partner because we're around each other so often. So it's a very fluid environment with partners and current students.
Yeah, and I have an out-of-town SO in Charlotte as well, and so it's so fun having her come to town and doing things like Fuqua Friday, where you get to know people beyond just being classmates with them, and it's fun to introduce them to more personal sides of your life other than, hey, I did XY job before business school. So that's been a really powerful thing for me. I think the Section 7 thing is kind of a uniquely Fuqua thing, how many resources Fuqua pours into making everyone, including their SOs, feel really connected to the community.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. So I want to pause briefly and just do another quick introduction for folks who joined late, and then maybe talk a little bit about clubs and organizations because they're just curious a little bit on what we're involved in. So my name is Amanda. I'm originally from Chicago and lived in Chicago for 9 years before coming to Fuqua. So I'm involved in Fuqua Pride. I'm involved in admissions. I'm a career fellow, so that basically means that I help mentor first years going through the recruiting process. I'm involved in different sports, so flag football, intramural, blue cup, things like that. So a ton of fun stuff.
Yeah, hi, I'm Ashley, originally from Ohio, but I spent 10 years in DC and in Philadelphia and spent the last 4 years in New York City before coming to school. I'm involved in our Net Impact Club, the Center for the Advancement of Social Entrepreneurship, our Black and Latino MBA organization, and also admissions. Few things. Yeah.
I'm Will Harris, originally from Virginia, and before school I was in Atlanta for 4 years. At Fuqua, involved in admissions as well. TA for a couple of classes like ManCom, a public speaking class, statistics, which is fun. And Fuqua to Duke is something I've really enjoyed that we spoke a little bit about earlier, a partnership with the undergrad program.
Yeah, awesome. My name is Tarun. I'm originally from the Washington, D.C. area. Spent most of my time before school in Washington, D.C., as well as some time in New York City. In terms of my on-campus activities, also involved in admissions as an admissions fellow, as well as I'm also a Cole Fellow and the co-president of the Media Entertainment Sports Club. So those are kind of my core activities.
Cool. Yeah. So thanks for those folks who are able to join us a little bit later. So one of the questions that we have here is, how long did it take for you to integrate and feel fully part of the Fuqua community?
I would say it was a very quick sort of, as I mentioned earlier, that this place started to feel like home very, very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
I think one of the awesome things about the first year experience at Fuqua is the extra month that we have, which kind of encompasses orientation and then the Global Institute, where you're sort of starting to get your feet wet and what it's like to be a student again, doing some of these kind of initial classes. But that first month that you're here is an incredible time in terms of building those bonds with your classmates. Orientation does a really, really good job of, I think, introducing you especially to your section and really encouraging you guys to, all of us to kind of, go out together, get, socialize, really get to know one another on a one-to-one basis. And I think that just really ramped up the kind of, feeling like we were together. I remember, in September and kind of once actually fall one had started, me talking with classmates and us being like, it feels like we've known each other for like 6-7 months when we've only known each other like a few weeks. So it really comes quickly in terms of building a lot of those bonds.
I agree. And I think another big part of it is that very few people come to Durham with a big network of friends. A lot of people, I, for example, didn't know a single person that was going to be in our class. And so most people are coming in with the mindset of really pumped up to meet their classmates. And so given that, everyone's, big smiles the first day, you're excited to just go up to a big random circle of people. And I consider myself to be kind of an introvert and normally would get like a lot of anxiety out of something like that. But I think since everyone's in the same boat, no one's coming in with like a big friend group where they're just going to hang out with those friends on the weekend, really kind of facilitates that, from day one, you really feel like you're a part of the community.
Yeah. There's also an opportunity to start making a few small friendships ahead of time, too. I felt like it was very comfortable. I made most of my friendships once I got here, but during BDW, our Blue Devil weekend, once you're an admitted student, met some folks from New York City. And so we started spending time with each other from April coming through, into July when we started all coming to school. So it was really nice to start spending time with people in that way, too. Smaller groups, but it was really nice.
Yeah, I would echo all of those things. I would say me like orientation. I feel like if I wasn't already feeling part of it, I was definitely feeling part of it after that. It was amazing. Orientation's a lot of fun. So I guess like more of a tactical question, but how did you guys find gals find apartments? I know my experience was a little bit different. I actually one of my coworkers who went to Fuqua sent me a note when she found out that I got in of like the more popular apartments, and I didn't really have to do much research. I just like picked from the list. So I don't know if you guys had a more intensive search.
No.
Yeah. So I thought it was a very kind of seamless experience. I think between sort of the resources that are already out there, like I remember when I got admitted, some actually like current students sending me a housing guide that kind of laid out everything in terms of where the big apartment buildings were, where most Fuqua students lived, kind of what the rents looked like, all those different types of things. And again, I mentioned this a couple times, but it's pretty centralized for the most part in terms of where a lot of the Fuqua students, the majority of Fuqua students I say would live. So that part is pretty easy. I think that also when you're talking about Blue Devil weekend and kind of admitted students weekend, there's literally kind of a portion of the day dedicated to meeting with a lot of the representatives from these different apartment buildings. Like they're very sort of engaged with the school because they know so many kind of students, that they're a hub for a lot of students. And they generally offer like, apartment tours on the weekends and things like that. And so it was actually a very easy experience in terms of kind of identifying where I wanted to be. And there's tons of availability for those apartments. And then I think, in addition to that, finding roommates is also a pretty easy process in terms of, as soon as people are admitted, they're sort of posting on the Facebook groups and the different, social media channels that we have available to us for, hey, I'm looking for a roommate. And there's Google documents of people looking to match up and things like that. So I think it was a pretty easy experience for me.
Yeah.
And to add on to that too, I chose to live in an apartment, but the housing cost of living and housing in Durham is relatively inexpensive, especially if you're coming from a larger city.
Yeah.
So a lot of people take advantage of getting a house. And so I know lots of our classmates have rented smaller houses. Some of them are actually bigger houses. But that also gives you a lot of variety in terms of, your personal living style and what you're looking for the time that you're here.
Yeah.
And also a little more tactically, just on timing, I don't think I booked my apartment until May or June, and there was still plenty of availability, just given that, it's just a 2-year program. There's a lot of turnover in the apartment complexes. So you'll find people as late as July, even very beginning of August, looking for apartments. And it's easy. You're very rarely going to be backed out of an opportunity to live in one of the kind of core 3 big apartment complexes.
And I think that's one thing, like compared to big cities, that's a big difference. Because like at least in Chicago, it's extremely competitive, like to find apartments. So like you go in and you expect like day one, like I need to sign if I like it.
Yeah.
Like you do have the luxury to look around a little bit.
Yeah.
But like I think ultimately most people live within like, a similar apartment block, more or less. But then to Ashley's point, like if you move outside of that area, like it becomes even more affordable and you get a huge home, a yard. Like one of my C-Lead team members has a house to herself and like a huge backyard and it's amazing. So yeah, you can really get whatever it is you're looking for, either like the closeness of like being able to walk like you do get in a big city, living close to everybody, or you can get your own space where you're not really living on top of people, just like a mile away, not even less than. So.
And we've talked a lot about 9th Street is the area we've been talking about, a kind of the centralized place where a lot of students live. I think a growing group is living downtown now as well.
Downtown,
Which I think, especially first year, it's really advantageous to be in the 9th Street area, just given like you're surrounded by your classmates. But we've talked a lot about how cool downtown Durham is. That's something that I almost wish that I had pursued a little bit more of, looking around some options downtown, because it's really nice to be able to just, you're still, 10-minute drive from school, but walk out and go to a lot of the cool restaurants we've been talking about.
Awesome. Cool. So we have a couple questions left. Want to make sure we try to get through them. This one's a little bit more specific, and I'm happy to help address it. So they're asking about talking about the LGBT community at Fuqua in Durham and how supportive it is, and what the opportunities the community has to offer. So quite frankly, like me personally, like I was a little like not sure what it was like being a queer woman moving to Durham, what that was going to be like in comparison to Chicago, but it's a city, right? Like there are people here. It's no different than like any other major city, to be honest with you. I was really relieved when I came here. I would say the bigger difference is purely just like the quantity of queer people, but that I think with any big city, you just lose quantity of every diverse individual. So not something to be surprised by. I see queer people within Fuqua, within broader Duke, within the programs around us, as well as just like local people. And I've never felt like I couldn't be myself or felt like that was threatened in any way that was different than what I would get in Chicago. So, I mean, yes, it's different, but like it's really not that different, to be honest with you. I mean, I don't know if you guys have any additional perspective on like just like the community and culture of Durham, but I feel like it's pretty forward and pretty.
Yeah, I feel like Durham is a very comfortable place to be. That's like the best word I can describe it. Like when you're in like a rigorous business school program, you're in classes all day, you're networking, you're enjoying your classmates. Durham has felt just incredibly comfortable to me. The people that I meet, the places that I go, I have not had any issue like socially feeling uncomfortable in any way.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Great.
Yeah, and I would say one thing that Fuqua does really well, like the ally programs that we offer are really nice. And that to me is even more of a testament of like how welcoming it is versus like the people who identify. It's like how many people actually want to like be a voice for you or support you. And so that to me is something that's very prominent here and was a big factor in my decision to come to Fuqua, because I felt like even when I was interviewing, I was welcomed for who I was. And actually when I came, there was like a Fuqua Pride bar crawl and there were a ton of allies there. And that to me just felt welcome and made me feel comfortable being in my own skin. So yeah, I mean, it's not, it seems more daunting than what it is, but it's really not what you would estimate or expect it to be in a very good way. So tactically, just going back to recruiting, what resources did you find most helpful preparing for a quick turnaround to formal recruiting once you arrived on campus, more specifically from like switching careers, which I think all of us, we're all career switchers. So yeah.
Yes.
I have two thoughts on that. The first one is that it's not all that immediate of like, you're not jumping into recruiting right when school starts. So that was something that I was actually really relieved by. I kind of figured that like day one, you hit the ground running, you're having coffee chats, et cetera. But that Global Institute period that Tarun talked about, it's really, the CMC does a good job, I think, like the first week of that program saying, this first month and even the first 2 months of school, you're just here to get used to being a student again, enjoy your classes, get to know your classmates. And there's really not, beyond like some very high level introductory meetings from clubs, you're not networking or going to employer events. So it's nice to have kind of a cushion, I'd say until like mid to late September, where companies are really starting to come to campus. But as far as resources that I used, Amanda already talked about it a little bit. The second years are so huge. These people are coming back from their internships. They have amazing perspective. They've been through the whole process, be it through the behavioral interviews, case interviews for consulting. So that was what I leaned on the most, I'd say, is just people that have been through the process. They've either been successful or have pointers on how to become successful through the process. I found that to be an amazing resource.
Yeah, I would just reiterate what Will said. I mean, I think, I know we talk about Team Fuqua a lot, and it's a bit of a cliche, but like it truly is sort of shown in and reflected in sort of the second year interactions. I think that is a huge differentiating factor of Fuqua, like the willingness of sort of paying it forward. That every student comes into school with, and I think that's only reiterated sort of in their second year, and those feelings. I think even including when we're talking about the activities that we're involved in, whether it's admissions, things like that, it's all really kind of core to making sure that we're giving back to this community that's given back so much to us. And so yeah, the second years are just an incredible resource, whether it's talking to them about their internship experiences, but also through the clubs, right? And the clubs put on a ton of really, really helpful programming in terms of kind of building out. I know Consulting Club has like Roadmap and a lot of the different finance club, they all have their different kind of curriculum of how to structure your recruiting process with sort of the input from directly people who've just done it rather than, and so I think that has been also an amazing resource for us.
And if anyone's interested in like social impact or sustainability work, energy, those kind of things, all of those clubs also have really strong professional roadmaps. So,
yeah, and I think I'm maybe the nerd that I'm going to say that class, But seriously, like if you don't know like certain industries or issues, like the cases that we read, like I've learned so much just through casing or just learning how to think critically or being able to like ask interesting or thoughtful questions about something I know nothing about, which I think is just great prep. And even our professors, right? I mean, they're so involved. They're like amazing at what they do. They are leading a lot of research in just very interesting spaces. So like that's a way that like you could really take advantage of their insights to apply to your recruiting experience.
One additional resource. So I recently took a class in the library for databases. But I was able to use some of them on my own, but I took a class recently too. So our Ford library, I think we have like, isn't she, Jane Day is like one of the best librarians
She's amazing.
among all MBA programs. So we're like really excited to have her. But you also have like, so the access to databases that can help you with both recruiting and then tactically in terms of like cities and which companies are in which cities based off of industry, but also like really great industry analysis reports that can kind of give you deep insight into things that you may not have been able to explore and that you don't have access to as an individual. They're incredibly expensive databases. So we have easy access to that in the Ford Library.
Yeah. Awesome. And I think we should also mention the Career Management Center is a pretty good resource, especially. I mean,
we talked about earlier.
They are the function that is explicitly for that purpose, and I think even more and more helpful for those doing kind of the less traditional paths, doing the startup VC type work. So they're there, and even like I just for sanity checks would go up there to like open coffee chat hours with them just to say, hey, here's kind of been my approach so far. Am I thinking about this correctly? And they're a good, almost just like mother figure to like pat you on the back sometimes and say, hey, you're doing okay, or hey, maybe you could try these two things out. So that's something that a lot of people lean on as well.
Yeah, and if you're interested in more the startup space, more traditional entrepreneurship, we've got P3, the program for entrepreneurs. So we have lots of resources here. The Duke Innovation Center that you can take advantage of too, if that's more your recruiting route.
Yeah. More stuff than you could think. Like, yeah, you have plenty here.
I mean, the last thing I would say is just, and I think we've mentioned it before, but just the amount of companies that come on campus here, right? And they just are willing to invest like resources getting to know you one-on-one. I think that may be sort of a misconception that people might have of Fuqua is, it's a little bit detached from like some of the big cities, so they don't, might not have access to that cache of recruiters, but like literally every, like it is tough to get through the amount of companies that are coming on campus and actively recruiting here. And so that's, I think, just also an amazing resource to have.
Yeah, definitely. So what does Team Fuqua mean to you guys and gal?
I can try first. Yeah, I think this is a fun question. And given that we all work in admissions, I think it's a question we get a lot. And I find that my answer changes kind of depending on the day, just because it can take on so many different meanings. The biggest kind of overarching theme for me, though, is just having the support network that I can try and fail and not be worried about like looking dumb or feeling stupid for trying something. Like Amanda's in my section. I, again, like am generally more of a quiet guy. And at least in my undergrad experience, I don't know that I ever spoke in a class. And so coming to school, feeling empowered to like ask a question that, you know, might be a bad question, but just knowing that because I'm curious about it, maybe there's someone else in the class that is, and knowing that kind of the Team Fuqua environment is there to support that and want people to feel empowered to do things like that, as opposed to like going into your shell and feeling nervous that you're going to like say something that you should have known before class. So kind of a specific thing for me, specific definition, but that's been kind of the biggest benefit, I think, thus far for Team Fuqua for me.
Yeah. So I think it means a few different things to me. I think I mentioned sort of the pay it forward culture that I think is so sort of like core to this experience. I think also Team Fuqua means, you know, that the students here, I think, come with a passion for getting outside their comfort zone to some extent and really sort of investing time in getting to know people that aren't exactly like them, right? It's sort of it's trying to it's really embracing the fact that we're all coming from different backgrounds and countries and cultures, and being willing to sort of really invest the time to get to know one another. But also at the same time, I think another key part of it is like, we don't take ourselves too seriously here. I think that like it's obviously like business school is a competitive environment and everyone is ambitious and trying to do their best. But I think one of the things that really attracted me to this school was just everyone is so down to earth and low key about you know, how they go about everything in their life, but are yet so successful in every aspect of their life. I think that's really like a key part of Team Fuqua as well.
Yeah. Like me personally, like I have just been blown away at like how incredible everybody is here and how willing people are to help. Like you can just throw out a random message in one of the 8,000 group me's you're in and like someone will come running to help you. Like for example, right, like a lot of people might be recruiting for tech or consulting. Like I personally recruited for consulting along with many of my classmates, but we prepped with each other, right? Like we helped each other, like we gave each other feedback. We tried to push each other for something that you could maybe say, oh, we're going for the same thing. But like, that wasn't what was on people's mind. It was like, how do I, you know, invest in this person? Like they're investing in me. Like, how do we get each other to like the best possible place we could get for recruiting? And like, that was just like a huge eye-opening experience to me of what Team Fuqua means, because it's paying it forward, but it's also just like paying it in general to anybody, right? And it's not something that you feel like comes at like a what is it? Quid pro quo? Quid pro quo?
Nailed it.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yes.
Term of the month. Right?
Yeah, but it's like it's something that people do selflessly, right? And like that to me is amazing. And like realizing that like the whole is bigger than the individual, like that's Team Fuqua to me. So.
And I think I would highlight too that for anyone else coming from what might be considered a non-traditional background to some degree, the idea of like Fuqua being a safe place to take risks to me was incredibly important, and so that resonated with me.
Yeah. So we have a little bit of time left. One question that we do have is just tips for applications. If you guys have any, like I guess mine is just like be yourself. I think I held back a little bit, but I feel like how like to be memorable on paper, you just really got to put it all out there. And I think even for interviews and all of that, right? Like it's how do you stand out and how do you really lean into who you are as an individual? Like I would definitely recommend that for applications.
Yeah, I would say really like reach out to the student body here and get to sort of get an understanding of sort of what the on the ground experience looks like. I think that will shape your application and what you can say in so much more of a meaningful way. I mean, whether it's, and obviously if you have the opportunity to come here and visit, I think that's by far the best way to kind of like help bring stories to your application about sort of what resonates with you about this school. But I think if you can talk with the more students you talk to, I think the more you're going to get a diversity of in terms of what the experience here is. And I think that will just add a unique color to your application.
Yeah. And I think people consider like the 25 random facts essay daunting at first. And I know I did. I would say both to echo what Amanda said, first, be yourself on that, but also like get excited about it as an opportunity to, like, I think very few schools give you that opportunity to give a real kind of recount of your personality and show really who you are. I think it's hard to do that in a more standard prompt where it's like, tell me about some adversity you went through. So having an opportunity to kind of lay it all out there by the end of the maybe it's because I was done with it, but I was excited to have had the opportunity to kind of give a more accurate, more in-depth portrayal of myself. So just try to, have fun with it. And that's, I think, what the admissions team is looking for with it.
Yeah. So we have one question. Want to quickly just address it, and then we'll do some parting thoughts and say our goodbyes. Anybody want to share community services that you've done at Fuqua? I know we all are involved in Rise Against Hunger as a full class, but if there's anything specific that you want to highlight.
Yeah, so we start out orientation with working with Habitat for Humanity, and that's sort of core to our just even coming here is kind of building that into our experience. And I've certainly been involved with that in a couple more instances subsequently, and I know a lot of my classmates have. But I think there's a ton of different opportunities, whether it's Fuqua on board, and I don't know if any of you guys are involved in that, but that's also a great way to kind of give back to the community. So Ashley, maybe you can speak to that. But yeah, I think there's everyone I think really sort of holds themselves to a high standard in terms of giving back to their community, and I think there's a lot of opportunities.
Yeah, so I am a part of Fuqua on board, a board member for a local school. Has about 50 young boys. They're Black and Latino, and it gives them an opportunity to have a private school experience, but they don't pay tuition. And so that's been a fabulous experience to be on the board, to understand the business of the organization, but also to participate in the learning and development of those children. So it's been great.
Well, thank you for joining us today, and thank you, panelists, for sharing your thoughts and insights and what Team Fuqua means. Thank you so much, and we hope to see you here on campus.
Bye.
Goodbye.